All right, so in this module, I'm going to be talking about client-oriented practical evidence searches, which is essentially called COPES questions, and what's used to change a practical problem into something more evidence-based and research-oriented. So there's 6 steps to this, and I'm going to go through with you in depth, and then I'll show you how you can use this for your course project or for your clinical work. So for the COPES questions, the 6 steps are: 1, converting the information needs related to a practical decision into an answerable question. And I'll show you examples of this. So from this handout on D2L, I've got the same things from my slide. I'm just going to use this Word document instead. So converting the information needs related to the practical decision into an answerable question. So let me just give you a case scenario and I'll try to illustrate this a little bit more. So the case illustration here: you are a social work case manager for a family in which an adolescent son age 16 has been arrested twice in the last year for theft. The most recent arrest was for stealing a car. The judge has court ordered your adolescent to treatment and has recommended the Scared Straight program. Your role as a family case manager is to find an appropriate treatment program for this adolescent boy. So based on the client scenario and the 6 steps above, write a COPES question for him. So when you're coming up with these questions, this is on page 2 by the way, there's 5 types of questions. And for him, it looked like we wanted to figure out what the effectiveness of the Scared Straight program was, right? So the question, effectiveness, the client type, how would you describe this client? So for him, we've got effectiveness, client type, 16-year-old male, corrections. What treatment are we trying to implement for the problem? Was the Scared Straight program? What's the alternative you might do as opposed to the Scared Straight program? Maybe individual therapy. And outcomes of the intervention. What are we looking for? For us, it would essentially be decreased delinquency. So these are the 5 components to our COPES question. We've said that we're looking at an effectiveness question for a 16-year-old male, either Scared Straight program, or would an individual therapy work better for decreasing delinquency. So I'm going to write this all out. All right, so there could be more than one right way to write this out. But essentially what I wrote is, for a 16-year-old male with a legal history, will a Scared Straight program be effective for decreasing delinquent behaviors? So that's a good COPES question, I would say. You probably could have come up with something else. But again, we've ultimately described what type of question we're trying to answer, for whom, and what outcome we're looking at. So now for step 2, we've got to track down the maximum efficiency best practice to which answer this question. So where would you go to look for a question like this? I would say Google Scholar might be a good place to start. If I click on Google Scholar, I can enter my COPES question, or I could just enter Scared Straight programs, really. So the first thing that comes up is Scared Straight and juvenile awareness programs for preventing juvenile delinquency. A systematic review, looks like it's published in 2003. So the abstract is free for this one. It looks like I might be able to get the full PDF as well. But if I were to pull up this article or figure out where to get it online from PubMed or the UWM library, I could look through it and say whether or not it was an effective program based on their results. For this one, just looking through the abstract, this one might be of interest to me because it says the meta-analysis of prevalence rates indicates that interventions on average are more harmful to juveniles or do nothing. So that doesn't sound too promising for us, unfortunately. All right, and so my favorite source that I'm going to show you is PsycInfo. So PsycInfo you can get through the UWM library. It's in their database list. This is my favorite. So I'm just going to type in Scared Straight program here. So I'll just choose the first one that comes up. An empirical evaluation of juvenile awareness programs in the United States. Can juveniles be scared straight? Sounds promising. So I can open up the full PDF here. I'm just going to skip through the results for purposes of illustration. But if I skip to the conclusions and recommendations, based on their comprehensive review, we conclude that these programs are not working. I'm just going to take it their word for it because this course isn't about scared straight programs, but just to show you that there's a few different places where you can answer your COPES questions online. A couple other ones. The Campbell Collaboration Library is one that's can be used for specific social work questions. The Cochrane Library is one that's commonly used. And lastly, PubMed is one that's really commonly used, really valuable. And so if I type in scared straight program here, you can see that I'm getting quite a few hits on it as well. So any one of these would be fine for a COPES question. All right, so now that we've got the first two steps, step 3 was to critically appraise the evidence, which we kind of just did briefly. It sounded like scared straight programs for our question. I would argue that probably not the best program to use. Step 4 was to apply the results to practice decision. So if you were in this case where you're talking to the judge, you'd probably say that, there's probably another program that would be a little bit more effective for the 16-year-old boy. Step 5 is to evaluate the effectiveness and efficiency of carrying out steps 1 through 4, and then seek to improve them in the future. So we found that scared straight programs weren't as effective, so what might be a different step that we can use instead of that? And then step 6 is to teach others how to use the same. So just documenting based on your COPES question, what did you find and how could you improve practice in a different way?